My eyes hurt, my brain hurts, and my wallet hurts. February was like a bicycle kick of hype video games straight to the face, and it's not even over yet. No rest for the wicked though, because March is also loaded with a bunch of huge releases. So I guess here we go again. Now, I featured 17 games to get pumped about last month, but I left some off because they didn't appeal to me as much. Well, you know what? This video isn't for me, it's for you. If I kept that same approach going forward, I'd be doing a disservice to anyone who has different tastes than I. So let's see where we end up this month. It's not going to be all known releases, but I'm gonna do my best to expand my original perspective and let you know about as much as I reasonably can. One final thing before we get started, if you dig the video, please like and subscribe. I'll have these coming once a month as long as you all have an interest. Also, head on over to Twitch to catch me live from Monday to Friday from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. Central Standard Time. You can also find me on Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, and Hover. And finally, if you really enjoy my content and want to support my work, head on over to my Patreon and consider supporting me there as well. All that out of the way, get cozy. This one's gonna take a while. The follow-up to 2017's ELEX brings us back to the post-apocalyptic science fantasy world of Magellan. ELEX II takes place several years after the events of the original, where this time a new threat has arrived from the skies. ELEX II will feature a large, handcrafted open world with 5 different factions, all of which you can decide to pledge your allegiance to. The game allows you to interact with NPCs who remember what you've done and react accordingly, which may have a direct result on the story. Now, from the trailers, the game sports some impressive character models in a world that I do genuinely find intriguing. That being said, the first ELEX is one that I bounced off of pretty early. I remember finding the gameplay lacking, the combat messy, and the open world aspect pretty unfulfilling. While these elements still worry me, there is something very interesting about this world and lore that Piranha Bytes has created. The third entry in the Shadow Warrior franchise takes the series to an all-new level. Lo Wang is back, this time to recapture an ancient dragon that he and Orchai Zila, I don't know how to pronounce that, who's become an unlikely ally, has unwillingly unleashed. Shadow Warrior 3 touts fast-paced gunplay, razor-sharp melee combat, and a spectacular free-running movement system complete with air dashes, wall running, double jumps, and a brand new grappling hook. You'll also see a beautiful feudal Japan landscape with dynamic combat arenas littered with dangerous hazards for both the player and the enemies, all of which is dripping with humorous one-liners, hilarious banter, and crazy predicaments. Now, I'm relatively unexposed to this series, but not because I'm disinterested. I've had the first 2 Shadow Warrior games on my list for a while, I just haven't gotten to them yet. As interested in those games as I am, the trailer for Shadow Warrior 3 looks all kinds of crazy. It won't be a day one, and I won't play it until I play the first 2, but man, I can't wait to start up this series. The follow-up to 2018's Far Lone Sails this time has the action moving from a dried-up sea to a world that is submerged. After finding an abandoned ship, the main character, I don't know if it's Toe or Toei, sets out to journey across the horizon while searching for answers about what happened to their home. Fans of the original should feel at home as the game utilizes the same art style, the same side-scrolling gameplay, and a familiar haunting soundtrack. Some changes are in store as well though, as verticality has been added, allowing players to dive under the surface of the water and explore the ruined civilization below. I've never played Far Lone Sails, but after seeing some trailers for Changing Tides, my interest dialed up a bit. I think it's a game that I could enjoy and may try to play at some point in the future. Changing Tides isn't billed as a sequel to Lone Sails, but instead is referred to as a companion piece. I doubt I'll play it on day one, but that's more because I think I want to go ahead and commit to playing Lone Sails first. Coming from the Chinese Room, the studio behind Dear Esther and Everybody's Gone to the Rapture, we have Little Orpheus. Originally released on Apple Arcade, this version has high-res textures, new moves, new animations, and enhanced graphics and effects. It will also include an additional 9th episode. The game itself features a Soviet cosmonaut who is dropped into an extinct volcano with his exploration capsule, Little Orpheus, to explore the center of the Earth. You explore lost civilizations, undersea kingdoms, prehistoric jungles, and lands beyond imagination. Now, I'm typically not one for mobile games, and even less so for mobile game ports. Little Orpheus appears to be the exception, though. This looks like another fun, narrative side-scrolling adventure in the vein of The Artful Escape, Planet Alpha, and even the darker games like Inside and Limbo. This is quite the departure from what we've seen the Chinese Room release in the past, but given their track record with those games, I'm eager to see what they can do with this genre. While comedy is not the first thing most people think of when they hear Conan the Barbarian, Funcom is trying their hand at that very thing. Conan Chop Chop is the self-proclaimed most realistic stick figure game ever made, which is information I don't really know what to do with, but I think it sets the proper tone for what to expect from this 1 to 4 player roguelite featuring characters from the Conan universe. After watching some gameplay, I can't help but be instantly reminded of a game I just played in February called Nobody Saves the World. It has a very similar aesthetic and seems to have the same frenetic pace. The focus on multiplayer is much more evident here. While nobody had the option for online co-op, this game feels like it was built from the ground up with multiplayer in mind and allows for both online and couch co-op. A demo was released on February 21st, so give it a shot. The Cruel King and the Great Hero is the follow-up to the 2018 game The Liar Princess and the Blind Prince. The story revolves around Yu as she embarks on a journey to become a great hero. By her side is a fearsome beast known as the Cruel King that accompanies her on a journey full of charming settings, monsters, and puzzles. As you progress on your journey, you'll find that there's much more to the relationship between these two than first meets the eye. The Cruel King and the Great Hero sports an interesting hand-drawn pen and watercolor aesthetic that was also used in The Liar Princess. It looks like there's a bit more color and personality to this game versus Liar Princess, so it definitely appeals to me more than the previous game did on an aesthetic level. The game appears to feature a turn-based combat system that allows you and the Cruel King to gain experience and gold after fights. You can also befriend monsters and help them out during the course of the adventure. This seems like a very whimsical game that my gut says is going to tug on the heartstrings a bit as the adventure unfolds. Battle Cry of Freedom is a passion project if ever there was one. Created by Civil War reenactors and taking 10 years to develop, Flying Squirrel Entertainment is finally releasing their version of the American Civil War from a first and third person perspective. This unique game allows you to participate in massive 500-player battles on one of 14 massive battlefields. You can play the role of traditional soldiers taking up arms, engineers who are responsible for building barricades, digging trenches, and rigging explosives, all the way to raising troop morale as a fifer or a drummer. I'm so intrigued by this game because it covers a war that we rarely see talked about in this medium. The Civil War, according to History.com, was the deadliest war ever fought on US soil with 620,000 out of 2.4 million soldiers killed. With experts on the war at the helm, I think this game about the historically brutal war is one that will be handled with care, with the weaponry, the strategies, and even the music played on the battlefield all being historically accurate. 1 to 4 players step into the shoes of a sentinel. Equipped with a Gideon coffin, which allows you to carry up to 4 weapons instead of 2, you must fight to reclaim the Tower of Babel utilizing the fast-paced action combat system that Platinum Games is known for. Personally, I'm keeping my expectations tempered for this one. The game was originally announced back in 2018. It disappeared for a while, only to re-emerge with a different art style and a games-as-a-service model. While it is good news that all the updates are supposed to be free post-launch, the change of art style is one that I'm very much on the fence about. The new direction utilizes what's been termed as a brushwork style, which is meant to mimic an oil painting. I'm not against the art style specifically, but I'm just not sure it's going to work well in a game like this. We'll see on March 3rd though, or if you can't wait that long, you can check out the demo on PlayStation consoles. The Real Driving Simulator is back, bringing with it 420 cars at launch, 90 tracks, dynamic weather, and fan-favorite modes from past entries. Gran Turismo 7 also introduces a new racing AI called Sophie to offer up stiff yet realistic AI competition. I've been a Gran Turismo fan since the first back on the original PlayStation. I feel it is a series, though, that has lost steam as the entries piled up. My hope is that this entry brings Gran Turismo back to the forefront. Personally, I've found myself less interested in the simulation racers as the more arcadey racing games keep getting bigger and bigger. I doubt this one will supplant Forza Horizon as my favorite racing game, but it could easily slide in as my favorite racing simulator. Here's hoping. This strategy RPG harkens back to the classic SRPGs like Final Fantasy Tactics and Ogre Battle. Command your group of warriors who have been entangled in a conflict between 3 nations. The decisions you make affect the story and ultimately the outcome. All this happens from a perspective that utilizes the much-loved HD 2D art style, blending 3D environments and pixel art. Everything about this game excites me, except the strategy RPG aspect. Now, I loved Final Fantasy Tactics back in the day, but for whatever reason, that also marked the end of my interest in SRPGs. If a game was ever going to win me over and bring me back, Triangle Strategy might be it. It's no secret I love pixel art, and the rise of HD 2D games speaks to me on a whole new level. If you'd like to give the game a shot yourself, consider checking out the demo that's out on Switch. It's one of those amazing demos that lets you start the game, then carry your progress over when the game finally releases. What Lies in the Multiverse is a game about worlds turned inside out. You harness the power of parallel universes to alter reality in midair, turning pitfalls into bridges, walls into tunnels, and foes into friends. Journey across gorgeous pixel art worlds, meet a whole host of quirky characters, and accompany Everett, a scientist with questionable scruples, on a journey that explores the secrets of the multiverse. The more I see this game, the more intrigued I am by it. A well-made platformer that brings something unique to the table in terms of mechanics is one thing, but building in levity while potentially exploring some dark themes based on some of the stuff I've read is intriguing. Also, something that interests me even more is the rating. The trailer wouldn't lead me to think that this game is M-rated, but knowing it is, makes me wonder just where this game ends up taking us. A musical story's approach to rhythm games allows the player to listen and feel the music rather than simply follow a visual timeline. With a great animated art style and a soundtrack based on 70s folk rock psychedelia, this game has garnered a lot of attention pre-release. Already winning awards for Best Art Direction and Best Audio at the Taipei Game Show, the stage is set for the game to try to upend the rhythm game genre. Personally, I think this game looks great. I wish I had a better grasp of the rhythm mechanics and how they worked though. It's hard to pick that up in a trailer, but it also feels like the rhythm aspect is secondary to the story, or that it's simply a mechanic to push the narrative forward. I could be wrong, but I'm intrigued nonetheless. Likely the most visually unique game to be released this month, RPG Time: The Legend of Wright is a handmade epic RPG about a youth who wants to become a game developer. The game takes place in an elementary school classroom after school has ended. RPG Time seemingly features a UI made up of a cardboard diorama, with pencil-drawn scenes on notebook paper showing the moment-to-moment gameplay. I love the look of this game so much. It'll be interesting to see how it all comes together on a gameplay level, but visually, I love everything I see. Looking at the games surrounding this date, there's a chance I make this a day one game. That should tell you just how into this I am. This free-to-play kart racer features characters from the Chocobo and Final Fantasy universes. The game features plenty of game modes and both online and offline racing in areas known from both franchises. Square also introduced the first season, which allows racers to compete in 64-person bracket-style tournaments. Each season will run 2 months and will award players with special items as they raise their season score. A prize pass will also be available for purchase, granting additional rewards. I learned today that the Chocobo universe and the Final Fantasy universe are apparently not the same universe. I learned that from a kart racer. Anyways, you can't beat free. In a world where Mario Kart 9 doesn't exist, which probably stings a little less once we talk about games coming on the 18th, more kart racing isn't a bad thing. As a massive Final Fantasy fan, I'm curious to see the tracks based on my favorite areas from those games. Workshop Simulator is the latest simulation we didn't know we needed. This one features a heartwarming story originating with a request from your grandmother to visit an abandoned workshop. This leads to a nostalgic journey through your family's history. Alongside the story, you'll be able to work with tools to revitalize objects and heirlooms, with more advanced tools unlockable through progression. As developers continue to explore what one can do in a simulation game, we're shown yet another example that could really capture an audience. Adding the story elements to what promises to be a relaxing gameplay experience could do wonders for Workshop Simulator and make the act of revitalizing something old have an even better payoff. Guide Ashtali, a cybernetically enhanced warrior, on a quest to save Tenochtitlan, her home and crown of the Aztec Empire. Armed with Lightkeeper, a powerful prosthetic arm powered by a mysterious energy, Ashtali must stand tall against fearsome enemies. Utilizing mobility and precision timing, you must master aerial maneuvers to outposition, outflank, and strike critical weaknesses. I played a demo of this a while back, and I honestly wasn't a big fan of the movement, which includes a lot of gliding and floating. It may not have clicked for me, but I'd encourage you to give the demo a shot on Xbox. It'll likely be one that I'm skipping on release, but I'll be interested to see what people have to say. Hidden Depths is a sequel to the 2015 game Submerged. Billed as a relaxploration game, you guide protagonists Miku and Taku through a land riddled with abandoned skyscrapers to learn more of the sunken city. The development team set out to create an experience with a perfect balance of tension and relaxation to draw people into the world and give them a chance to explore at their own pace. I think I played Submerged a while ago as part of a variety stream I used to do every Thursday. I didn't realize it though until I saw some screenshots. Regardless, Submerged Hidden Depths looks like a nice, calm opportunity to explore a beautiful yet mysterious ruined world. This feels like a good change of pace game that I'll try to play for myself at some point, admittedly probably not on day one though. Looking to bounce back from what was a critically panned effort with the last release, Visual Concepts has redesigned the gameplay engine of WWE 2K22 to include new controls and upgraded visuals. 2K22 will bring back modes like the 2K Showcase and My Rise, and the ability to continue to customize the player's WWE experience down to the smallest detail. In addition, new modes like My GM and My Faction hopes to keep players engaged with new content. While I'm not plugged into wrestling anymore, I know lots of people who are. I know that the last iteration of this game really left a sour taste in WWE 2K fans' mouths. Hopefully, the additions made to this game will satisfy, but ultimately Visual Concepts needs to deliver a game that is not only fun to play, but has the technical aspects nailed down. a land filled with lost legends, ancient powers, and ferocious monsters in Tunic, an isometric action game about a small fox on a big adventure. This Zelda-esque game was first announced all the way back in 2015, so it's been a long wait. I played the demo that came out a couple months back for Xbox One, and I really enjoyed my time with it. As I was playing it, I was reminded of one game specifically that was one of my top games of 2021, Death's Door. This game features a much brighter and colorful world, but after that, there are several similarities. My hope is that I feel just as strongly about Tunic this year as I did Death's Door last year. A franchise that has been around since 1993, the upcoming 14th entry in the series will also serve as a bit of a reboot. Initially scheduled for a 2019 release, which was delayed, then postponed indefinitely, it was finally revealed in January of 2022 that the latest entry would release on March 17th. This entry promised a new take on the popular mechanics with deep infrastructure and economy-focused gameplay. I've never played a Settlers game, and given my lack of interest in RTS games, I don't see myself starting with this one. I will say though, this game does look beautiful. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't at least slightly intrigued, but I know what kind of gamer I am, and I'll be likely steering clear of this one personally. I'll be curious to see how fans of the series like the changes though. This action RPG is a dark, gritty retelling of the original Final Fantasy from 1987, created in collaboration between Square Enix and Team Ninja. Taking an approach similar to the Souls games, this promises to be quite the departure from the NES Classic and modern Final Fantasy games as well. With the inclusion of jobs, loot, and iconic elements from the Final Fantasy series, this entry is touted as being a bold new vision for Final Fantasy. I don't think I've ever been on more of a roller coaster of emotion than I have for Stranger in Paradise. I initially was intrigued, I saw the first trailer and was not into it at all. I played the first demo and was still a hard no. I played the second demo and flipped 180. I watched another trailer and questioned everything again. As it stands right now, I think I'm fully committed to being all in, but have probably never been more apprehensive about a game I'm really looking forward to in my life. The fourth game released in a series that has been around since 2002, Syberia, The World Before, will follow Kate Walker across continents and time periods on a journey rooted in turmoil and tragedies of the 20th century. Full of puzzles, unusual characters, and mysterious circumstances, this latest entry in the renowned adventure game series continues the story that the first 3 games began. I have always been aware of the Syberia games, but as someone who isn't an adventure game fan, I really don't know much about the series. I do know that the first 2 games were generally the better received games in the franchise, with the third receiving some pretty harsh criticism for technical issues and outdated visuals. I'll be curious to see if fans feel redeemed with this release or if the past was as good as it gets for this franchise. Who Pressed Mute on Uncle Marcus is an eccentric FMV murder mystery. Every year, Abby's mother has a family quiz on her birthday. It's a long tradition that brings the rich and eccentric family together. This year, though, just before the quiz, Abby's uncle, Marcus, tells her that he is dying and that someone in the family has poisoned him. Your goal is to gather evidence and try to save your uncle before it's too late. Live-action games have experienced a bit of a renaissance the last several years. Uncle Marcus features a cast of well-known actors, and my first thought is that this sounds like a fun take on a game like Clue. It's also interesting to see how studios pivoted during the pandemic, as this game was shot in lockdown. Looks fun, looks quirky, and it's one I'll maybe check out eventually. Rune Factory is a series that spun off from Story of Seasons, formerly known as Harvest Moon. The series maintains the farming and social aspects of Harvest Moon, but adds to it a fantasy setting and dungeon crawling. In Rune Factory 5, after losing your memory, the hero is recruited into an organization known as Seed, which then gives you the freedom to explore the world, garden, cook, craft, fish, date, marry, and even start a family. I've never checked out the Rune Factory games, but I think I should. It seems like there's a lot to do, and while I'm not a fan of Harvest Moon or Stardew Valley, it seems as though there's enough there outside of farming to keep me entertained. It might be time to add these games to my list to check out at some point. Build is an interactive poem about a superstar athlete and the all-encompassing love between a mother and a daughter. A Memoir Blue combines hand-drawn and 3D art to bring Miriam's journey to life. A series of gameplay vignettes blends sacrifice and heartbreak with victory and pride as she reconnects with her inner child and deepens the love she shares with her mother. Visually appealing and a game that will most definitely impact the player on an emotional level, A Memoir Blue looks to be another unique creation published by Annapurna. Annapurna has a knack for publishing games that are unique, poignant, and fun. It's still too early to tell if a Memoir Blue will be the latest in a long line of great games published by Annapurna, but unique and poignant seem to be present and accounted for. NORCO is a Southern Gothic point-and-click adventure game that takes place in South Louisiana. While searching for your missing brother in the aftermath of your mother's death, you'll team up with a fugitive robot and explore the sinking suburbs, run-down strip malls, drainage ditches, and verdant industrial swamps of Louisiana's petrochemical hinterlands. This game has an incredible minimalist pixel art style. I'm reminded of Kentucky Route Zero when I look at it, but it has a much darker and stranger feel to it, which is surprising knowing what you may or may not know about Kentucky Route Zero. I have a hard time playing point-and-click adventure games because they usually feel so slow, but a game like NORCO looks so delightfully strange that it feels like the kind of game that would push a player like me forward just to see what kind of weirdness lies ahead. Tokyo has been overrun by a deadly supernatural force leading to the disappearance of the entire population. Ally with a spectral entity on their quest for vengeance as you make your way through a stunning city haunted by yokai. See famous landmarks like Shibuya Crossing and the Tokyo Tower frozen in time, and travel to the surreal underworld as you try to save your family. When this game was first announced, my hype level was through the roof. I loved what I saw from the teaser trailer, and with it coming from Tango Gameworks, the studio that brought us The Evil Within 1 and 2, I was ready. However, my interest cooled a bit once I saw more of the gameplay. It looks like it's going much more into the action side of things than the horror. Not necessarily a bad thing, but different than the vibe I got from the original trailer. I'm still excited to play it. I'll just be tempering my personal expectations a little bit. Join Kirby in his new 3D platforming adventure that's filled with wonder, wilderness, and waddle-dees, which I'm assuming are significant to Kirby fans because I have no idea what that means. Kirby in the Forgotten Land also introduces us to Mouthful Mode, which allows Kirby to inhale real-world objects like cars and vending machines to transform into them. I missed the Kirby train a long time ago, and I've never felt interested in jumping on. I think Kirby has a unique history as he was designed by Sakurai of Smash Bros. Fame, and I know he's a big Nintendo character, but he's just never appealed to me personally. I know he has his fans though, and they're likely pumped for this bright, colorful adventure. Create your own hero as you loot, shoot, slash, and cast your way through outlandish monsters and treasure-filled dungeons on a quest to stop the tyrannical Dragon Lord. Voiced by Will Arnett, Andy Samberg, Wanda Sykes, and Ashley Birch, discover a colorful cast of characters in this role-playing shooter based in a fantasy universe. Now, I'm one of the people that feel like Borderlands has gotten stale. I loved the first two, but the third just felt like more of the same with nothing that really pushed the series forward. Tiny Tina's Wonderlands seems like an amazing way to shake up a well-known franchise. I wouldn't be into another Borderlands, but I'm definitely into this. In Nightmare follows a young boy who closes himself off from everything and falls into a deep slumber. In this sleep, nightmares come to life to haunt him. Struggle against the boy's subconscious thoughts and solve intricate puzzles while you hide from the nightmare fuel constantly in pursuit. I love horror games, and this is a horror game with a twist. I can appreciate what it's doing, but adding puzzles to any game usually serves as a detriment for me. In a game that should be full of tension, solving puzzles could either really pay off or wreck the entire experience. I'm also unsure about the camera angle. For me, horror needs to be immersive, and I feel like it'll be a challenge to achieve that from an isometric perspective. It gets a lot of bonus points though for being a horror game, so I'm ruling nothing out. Set in a dark fantasy world based on Arthurian myth, this tactical RPG flips the script a little bit. You play Sir Mordred, King Arthur's nemesis. You killed King Arthur, but with his dying breath, he killed you as well. You've been brought back by the Lady of the Lake to finish what you started by killing King Arthur, or whatever he has become since she took his dying vessel to Avalon. Admittedly, I'm not the biggest turn-based CRPG guy, but it's a genre I keep trying to connect with. Based on trailers, this game seems to play like a cross between XCOM and Pillars of Eternity, but it's backed by Arthurian lore. It seems like an interesting approach to also have you control the bad guy who now has to kill the former good guy who died and became the baddest bad guy. King Arthur's Knight's Tale looks like one for the tactical RPG fans to keep their eyes on. Dark Japanese folklore comes to life in a psychological horror game where your only defense against the abominable demons is your ability to ward them off with a mystical kanji. Choose to be silent or choose to run as you explore a feudal Shinto shrine, solving puzzles and discovering things to unveil the story behind Naoko, the main character. As we've said, any horror game is gonna have my attention, and it's no different here. Initially, I only had a 25-second trailer that all in all showed about 12 seconds of gameplay. Thankfully, I got a better look during the trailer you're watching right now, and I have to say, I like what I see. The inability to defend yourself, though, is always intriguing because if done well, there's nothing more frightening than being completely helpless. West is an action RPG set in a surreal version of the developing frontier where lawmen and gunslingers share the world with fantastical creatures. Play through the origin stories of a group of heroes to help build their legend and shape the world around them. This game leans heavily into the use of supernatural abilities, which is an odd thing to say about a game set in the Wild West, but with the enemies ranging from outlaws to half-man, half-pig monstrosities and the undead, you'll need those powers to survive. Played from an isometric perspective but utilizing what look to be almost twin sticks shooting mechanics, I'll be curious to see how easy it'll be to control your character while firing off abilities. This game could end up being sneaky good if it controls well. Old school Pokemon fans rejoice! In Coromon, you play a researcher tasked with investigating the 6 Titans in the region. Utilizing a stamina-focused turn-based battle system, you explore a beautiful pixel art world full of challenging puzzles, interesting creatures, and massive bosses. Featuring 120 plus Coromon, unique regions to explore, character customization, and more, this game looks to deliver an old school Pokemon JRPG experience. This game looks so gorgeous, I'm even considering playing it. And a Pokemon fan, I am not. Now, I might be being a bit unfair to keep calling out that franchise instead of this one, but one look at the trailer and you should understand where I'm coming from. If you're looking for an old school Pokemon experience, this looks like a pretty good place to start. Based on the 90s movie Starship Troopers, Terran Command mixes classical real-time mechanics, tower defense, and tactical deployment of units. Your team is dropped right in the heart of a human colony overrun by arachnids. Set up your soldiers in strategic locations, build defense emplacements, and use the terrain to quell the onslaught brought on by the arachnid force. This movie was so badass back in the day. Kids, if you haven't seen it, do so. Just make sure you're old enough. It's bloody. Terran Command features an interesting blend of genres that seems to force the player to focus more on the action and less on the strategy. I mean, strategy plays a role, but it feels different than other slower-paced tactical strategy games. Despite that, I'm still not sure the gameplay is quite up my alley, even though the subject matter is. Fight for your freedom in a sprawling fantasy world caught between the living and the fallen. Hone your skills in a retro epic featuring puzzle platforming, Metroidvania exploration, and crunchy Souls-like combat. Features a handcrafted 2D interconnected world full of traps and deadly threats with tightly timed gameplay. You can also choose between multiple classes, Scout, Caster, or Archer, each with unique skills and gameplay. This will be the debut release for developer Retro Forge Games based out of Madrid. I think the pixel art looks really good based on the trailers I've seen. The world looks colorful, vibrant, and varied. It also features skill trees tied to each character class. Personally, I have become a huge fan of Metroidvanias over the last couple years, but they need to have a certain aesthetic quality. Typically that means pixel art, so I guess now we just sit back and wait. Build, design, and renovate beautiful homes alone or with friends online. Hometopia is developed by a couple that not only develop games, but, perhaps not shockingly, also renovate homes. The game features the ability to build homes from scratch, create homes and neighborhoods with friends, and design your furniture. The game also features a career mode where players renovate 30 different homes across 5 distinct neighborhoods, fix up rundown properties, and sell them for top dollar. This game first made its way onto my radar back in January, but it got delayed to March. As of right now, there still isn't a release date, but this game has some really interesting aspects to it, and I could see myself spending quite a bit of time losing myself in this one. Here's hoping we see this sometime in March. That's a lot of games, but we're not done yet. The games I just went through are the games that are brand new releases this month, excluding a select few. Along with those games, we also have these re-release/remasters, DLCs, and early access games. I'm going to do these as a bit more of a rapid fire type segment, so buckle up, here we go. On March 1st, the very well-received CRPG Pathfinder Wrath of the Righteous comes to PlayStation 4 and Xbox One, putting you in the shoes of a mythic hero capable of deeds beyond mortal expectations. On March 2nd, 35mm comes to PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and Switch. 35mm is a horror game about shooting photos of a post-apocalyptic world ravaged by an epidemic. Also on March 2nd, Instruments of Destruction comes to early access on Steam. This is a vehicle-building sandbox featuring physics-based destruction. Customize your vehicle using a wide array of parts to complete various objectives. March 3rd brings us the first DLC for Ghost Runner, called Ghost Runner Project Hell. Apparently this started as a smaller DLC, but has since turned into more of an expansion where you play as one of the original bosses from the core game. On March 8th, Spellforce 3 Reforced comes to most platforms as the definitive edition of the game that came out back in 2017. Blending RTS and RPG elements, the Reforced version comes with gameplay updates, a couple new modes, and other quality of life improvements. On March 10th, the Assassin's Creed Valhalla Dawn of Ragnarok DLC drops. Labeled the most ambitious expansion in franchise history, the rest of the description is full of spoilers, I assume. Good enough. On March 11th, .hack GU Last Recode comes to Switch. This collection includes all 4 original .hack GU titles, Rebirth, Reminisce, Redemption, and Reconnection, where you hunt down a legendary player killer in an in-game online MMORPG. On March 15th, Phantom Break Omnia is coming to PS4, Switch, Xbox One, and PC. Phantom Breaker Omnia is a remaster of a 2D anime fighting game that only released in Japan in 2011. This release marks the first time the game has been released for Western audiences. March 15th finally brings us the PS5 and Series X/S version of Grand Theft Auto V. It comes with all the bells and whistles the new-gen hardware brings with it, with GTA Online free to download for PS5 players for the first 3 months. On March 17th, the fighting game sequel to Persona 4, Persona 4 Arena Ultimax, comes to PS4, Switch, and PC. The game takes place 2 months after the events of Persona 4 and continues the story in an interesting way. But it's a fighting game. Just, that's what it is. Also on March 17th, Dark Deity, the tactical RPG originally released for the PC last year, comes to the Switch. It's a game that takes a lot of inspiration from games like Fire Emblem and Shining Force. On March 18th, the Booster Course Pass brings its first set of tracks to Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. Courses will be released in 6 waves of 8 courses between March 18th, 2022 and the end of 2023. This is paid DLC but will be included in the Nintendo Switch Online plus expansion pack membership. On March 22nd, Have a Nice Death enters early access on Steam. I actually thought this game was launching in full before I started this video, but as it is an early access game, we'll spend more time on this game likely next year. March 24th, another game enters early access, High Rise City. This game combines 2 genres in new and interesting ways, city builders and economy and resource management sims. On March 29th, the PS5 and Series X/S version of the award-winning Crusader Kings 3 releases. Live the life of a medieval ruler in this strategy RPG that lets you build your dynasty as you navigate medieval politics to outwit your enemies. And finally, on March 30th, Death Stranding Director's Cut releases for PC. Continuing the trend of PlayStation games trickling onto the PC, Death Stranding puts you in the role of Sam Bridges as you try to reunite a post-apocalyptic USA. Whew, what a list. What a month. I've been too scared to look ahead to April, but once we're done here, I'm setting my sights there next. Thank you all so much for tuning in. This is a labor of love and I hope you enjoy the video. Please leave a like and hit that subscribe button. Come hang out with us on Twitch, follow me on my socials, and if you're interested in supporting me beyond that, please go check out my Patreon linked below. I hope you have an outstanding month of March. We'll see you later on this month for the April Future Dub.